Have you ever opened your refrigerator, looked at the rows of neatly stacked fruits, vegetables, sauces, and leftovers, and thought to yourself, everything in here must be safe? For most of us, especially those of us over 60, the refrigerator has always been our trusted friend, the place where we keep our food cold, clean, and ready, a symbol of safety and health. But what if I told you that some of the very foods you place in that fridge could be silently hurting you? It may sound strange, even unbelievable, but recent studies have shown that many of the foods we assume are safer in the refrigerator are, in fact, more dangerous when stored there. And for seniors, this is more than just a kitchen mistake. It's a health risk. Did you know that nearly 48 million Americans get sick every single year from foodborne illnesses? And more than 3,000 of them die, many of them older adults. According to the CDC, people over 65 are at significantly higher risk of food poisoning because our immune systems naturally weaken with age. The worst part? These illnesses don't come from sketchy takeout or forgotten leftovers. Many of them start in our very own kitchens. In fact, some start right inside the refrigerator. That's right. The same fridge that we rely on to protect our health can actually become a hidden hazard when we unknowingly store the wrong kinds of food inside. Certain everyday foods, fruits, vegetables, pantry staples, can react badly to cold temperatures. They lose their nutrients. They grow harmful bacteria. They change chemically in ways that can make them dangerous, especially for older adults. And most people have no idea. So today, we're going to uncover the truth. We'll walk through 9 common foods you should never store in the fridge. Foods that might be sitting there right now in your kitchen. And we'll show you exactly where and how to store them instead, so you can protect your health and your loved ones. Because knowledge is power, and in this case, it could even save your life. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Every time you do, you help spread life-saving information to other seniors and families who need it. And let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from today? We love hearing from you. Now, let's dive in. Starting with a food so familiar, so common, you probably have a bag of it in your fridge right now. Number 9, potatoes. Let's start with one of the most beloved staples in any kitchen, potatoes. They're hearty, filling, and incredibly versatile. Mashed, baked, roasted, or fried. Potatoes have a special place in our hearts and on our plates. But here's something you may not know. Refrigerating raw potatoes doesn't preserve them. It actually makes them dangerous. That's not just a scare tactic. It's a chemical reality. When you store raw potatoes in the fridge, something sneaky happens at the cellular level. The cold temperature causes the starches in the potato to convert into sugars faster than they normally would. And at first glance, that might not sound like a big deal. Sugar, starch, aren't they basically the same? Not quite. Here's where things take a darker turn. When you later cook those refrigerated potatoes, especially at high temperatures like roasting or frying, those extra sugars interact with naturally occurring amino acids in the potato. Together, they create a chemical called acrylamide. Acrylamide has been linked to cancer in animal studies and is currently being studied for its potential impact on human health. The World Health Organization and the FDA both acknowledge its risks. And it's not the only problem. Refrigerated potatoes also lose their texture They become grainy, mushy, and sometimes even darken, signs that oxidation is taking place. That not only ruins the taste, but also indicates a breakdown in nutrients. Have you ever roasted potatoes and noticed they tasted strangely sweet? Or the texture was off, less crispy, more soggy? That's likely because they were stored in the fridge. And that fridge turned your healthy side dish into a chemical experiment. It's a quiet transformation, invisible to the eye, but potentially harmful to your health, especially if you're older, with a body that might not detoxify as quickly as it once did. So what should you do instead? Potatoes should be stored in a cool, dark, dry place, like a pantry or cabinet. Ideally, keep them in a breathable paper bag or a mesh sack. Avoid plastic, which traps moisture and leads to mold. Keep them away from onions, which can cause them to sprout faster due to the release of ethylene gas. Properly stored, potatoes can last several weeks. Fresh, firm, and safe to eat. If you already have a bag in the fridge, don't panic. Just take them out, inspect for any signs of sprouting or discoloration, and store them at room temperature moving forward. And remember, food safety is not just about preventing spoilage. It's about preserving your health. For seniors who may be more sensitive to chemicals and bacteria, avoiding these small but important mistakes can mean the difference between a meal that nourishes and a meal that harms. So, take a moment. Check your fridge. If you find potatoes hiding inside, give them a better home. They deserve it. And so do you. In the next part, we'll look at another everyday food that almost everyone puts in the fridge, but shouldn't. It's soft, warm, comforting, and you probably had some this week. Can you guess what it is? That's right, bread. And what we're about to reveal may surprise you. Let's move on to the next food on our list. It's something warm, familiar, and comforting. A staple in almost every home. A symbol of nourishment and simplicity. Bread. Now, if you're like many people, you've probably stored bread in the fridge thinking you were doing the right thing. Maybe you thought it would last longer. Maybe you didn't want it to go stale. But here's the truth. Putting bread in the fridge is one of the fastest ways to ruin it and potentially put your health at risk. Let me explain why. When you place bread in the refrigerator, a strange thing happens to the starch molecules inside. The cold air causes those starches to crystallize much faster than they would at room temperature. This process is called retrogradation, and it's what makes your once soft, fluffy loaf turn hard, dry, and crumbly almost overnight. You might think, well, that just makes the bread taste a little off, right? Unfortunately, it goes deeper than that. When bread dries out in the fridge, it also starts to lose moisture unevenly. This creates small, damp pockets, especially if the bread is kept in a plastic bag. And those moist spots? They're the perfect home for mold spores. Now, here's where it becomes serious, especially for seniors. Some molds produce mycotoxins, toxic compounds that can be harmful or even deadly when ingested. While a younger adult might be able to fend off small exposures, older adults, especially those with compromised immune systems, are more susceptible to these toxins. Eating moldy bread isn't just unpleasant. It can lead to nausea, vomiting, headaches, or more serious gastrointestinal issues. In rare cases, it can even cause long-term liver damage. And the worst part? Mold on bread isn't always visible right away. It often starts in the center or the bottom of the loaf, out of sight. By the time you see a fuzzy green spot, it's already spread. So how can you keep your bread fresh without putting it at risk? The answer is simple. Keep bread at room temperature in a sealed, breathable container, like a bread box or a paper bag. This preserves texture and prevents rapid stalling for a few days. If you want to keep it longer than that, freeze it. Freezing bread stops both mold and stalling without damaging texture. Just slice it beforehand so you can defrost what you need, one piece at a time. You can toast it straight from the freezer or let it thaw on the counter in minutes. Freezing preserves the moisture, the nutrients, and the flavor without inviting bacteria or mold into your meal. Let me share a quick story. A woman named Jean, age 72, had been putting her wheat bread in the fridge for years. She thought it was the only way to avoid throwing away half a loaf. But she often found it hard, tasteless, and sometimes even smelled off. Her doctor, who was treating her for recurring stomach problems, finally asked her about her food storage habits. When she mentioned the refrigerated bread, he suggested she switch to freezing instead. Jean made the change, and within weeks, she noticed a difference. Her stomach ache stopped, her toast tasted better, and she started feeling more in control of her meals again. It's a small shift, but sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference. If you're refrigerating bread right now, don't worry. Many people do it without knowing the risks. But now that you know, you can do better for yourself and for the people you care about. Give your bread the care it deserves, and more importantly, give your body the protection it needs. Now, take a deep breath. Walk to your kitchen. And if your loaf is hiding in the fridge, give it a better home. On the counter for a few days, or in the freezer for the weeks to come. In the next part, we're moving on to another common ingredient that often ends up in the refrigerator, but doesn't belong there. This one might surprise you. It's bold, flavorful, and known for making your eyes water. Yes, we're talking about onions, and what you're about to learn might just change the way you see this kitchen staple forever. Now let's talk about a food that's been used for centuries to add flavor, warmth, and depth to almost every dish we love. Onions, they're in our soups, our stir-fries, our sandwiches, and sauces. They add a comforting aroma when cooking, and that little extra something to every bite. But did you know that refrigerating onions could be one of the worst things you're doing to this powerful ingredient? It's true. And here's why. Whole onions are naturally designed to last a long time when stored correctly. They have a protective, papery skin, kind of like armor, that keeps moisture out and keeps flavor in. But the refrigerator is the enemy of that balance. Cold air inside the fridge is also full of moisture, and onions, especially whole unpeeled ones, absorb that moisture like a sponge. That softens the outer layers, which should stay dry. Over time, your onion becomes mushy, rubbery, and full of dark, moldy spots. And that's not just unpleasant, it's dangerous. Moldy onions can contain mycotoxins, just like spoiled bread. For seniors, these toxins pose a higher risk to digestion and immunity. Even if the mold hasn't spread visibly, the change in moisture can already invite harmful bacterial growth. But that's not the only problem. Refrigerated onions stink up your entire fridge. That strong smell? It's sulfur compounds being released, and cold temperatures make them break down even faster. Those compounds seep into nearby foods, especially ones that are high in fat, like butter, cheese, or milk. Ever had your fruit taste oddly like onions? That's not your imagination. It's cross-contamination. Tiny particles of onion aroma traveling into your other food. Suddenly, your toast tastes like stir fry and your yogurt smells like soup. There's also the issue of cut onions. Many people wrap half an onion in foil or plastic and toss it into the fridge for later. But here's the thing. Once an onion is sliced, it becomes far more vulnerable to bacteria. Its internal moisture and sugars are exposed, and if not sealed properly, those surfaces can harbor harmful microbes. Contrary to a popular myth, onions themselves don't soak up toxins just by sitting out. But that doesn't mean they're safe if left exposed in the wrong environment. Especially in a cold, damp fridge, they become prime real estate for spoilage. So, what's the solution? Here's how to store onions the right way. Whole onions should be kept in a cool, dark, well-ventilated area, such as a pantry or a hanging basket. Keep them away from potatoes, which release gases that cause onions to spoil faster. Cut onions can be refrigerated briefly, but only if sealed tightly in a glass or airtight plastic container, and ideally used within 1 or 2 days. Never store onions in plastic bags. They trap moisture and accelerate decay. Instead, use mesh bags or open baskets that allow airflow. And remember, freshness matters. A dry, firm, well-stored onion doesn't just taste better. It protects your health, keeps your meals safe, and avoids those unpleasant fridge surprises. Let me share the story of Harold, age 74. Harold loved cooking. He made his famous onion soup every Sunday and kept whole onions in the fridge just to be safe. But week after week, he noticed something strange. His soup started tasting bitter. His butter had a weird smell, and his sliced onions, they turned slimy within days. A nutritionist friend visited his kitchen one afternoon and noticed the problem immediately. Onions in the fridge, sitting uncovered beside apples and cheese. Harold made the switch. Pantry for whole onions. Tightly sealed containers for slices. The results? No more bitter soup. No more onion-scented butter. And no more waste. A small change. A big difference. And you can make that same change today. So, go ahead. Check your fridge. If you see a bag of onions hiding on the top shelf, or a half-sliced one wrapped in foil, give them a better home and protect your meals from becoming a health risk or an olfactory disaster. Now, are you ready for the next food on our list? This one might break your heart because it's something we all love, especially in a sandwich or a fresh summer salad. It's colorful, juicy, and supposedly full of vitamin C. Yes, we're talking about tomatoes. But keeping them in the fridge, that's where the problem starts. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood and mistreated foods in your kitchen. Tomatoes. They sit on sandwiches, brighten up salads, simmer in sauces, and add color to any meal. Tomatoes are loved for their taste, texture, and nutritional benefits, especially for older adults. Rich in vitamin C, lycopene, and antioxidants, they support heart health, boost immunity, and even protect against certain cancers. But the moment you put a tomato in the refrigerator, something changes. Something you can't see right away, but you'll definitely feel it when you take that first bite. Because tomatoes and refrigerators do not get along. You see, tomatoes are tropical fruits. They're used to warm temperatures. When they're exposed to cold, especially temperatures below 50 degrees F, the natural enzymes that give them flavor and aroma begin to shut down. This means their ripening stops. And with it, so does their flavor development. Have you ever eaten a tomato that looked fine but tasted bland and watery? That's not bad luck. That's cold damage. The fridge doesn't just dull a tomato's taste. It destroys its texture too. The firm, juicy flesh breaks down, turning into a soft, mealy mess that's nothing like the plump, vibrant tomato you picked up at the store. And it gets worse. Storing tomatoes in cold temperatures also speeds up the breakdown of vitamin C, one of the very reasons seniors are encouraged to eat more tomatoes in the first place. So not only do you lose taste, you lose nutrition too. And let's be honest, no one wants to bite into a soggy tomato that's lost its spark. But the damage doesn't stop with whole tomatoes. Even sliced tomatoes, if stored in the fridge, start losing their natural acidity and firmness, making them more prone to microbial growth and spoilage. If you're not planning to eat them right away, it's best to store sliced tomatoes in an airtight container and only keep them for a day or two. But for whole tomatoes, keep them out of the fridge, always. Instead, store tomatoes at room temperature, away from direct sunlight. Lay them stem side down to reduce moisture loss and slow the natural softening process. If a tomato is overripe and you're worried it might spoil, don't refrigerate it. Use it. Add it to a sauce. Roast it, or make a soup. Cooked tomatoes retain their lycopene, which is actually enhanced by heat, so nothing goes to waste. Let me share a quick story about someone who learned this the hard way. Mary, 68, loved tomato and cucumber sandwiches for lunch. But for months, her tomatoes were disappointing, mushy, tasteless, and dull. She kept trying different brands, different stores. Then her granddaughter, who had just studied food science in college, asked, "Grandma, are you keeping your tomatoes in the fridge?" Mary nodded, and that was it. Once Mary began storing her tomatoes in a fruit bowl on the counter, something magical happened. The taste came back. The bite returned, and her sandwiches, delicious again, all from a small shift. So, if you're storing tomatoes in the refrigerator because that's what you've always done, don't feel bad. Many people do it without knowing, but now you do. And now, you can enjoy your tomatoes the way they were meant to be. Vibrant, flavorful, and full of nutrition. Take a look in your fridge. If you've got tomatoes in there right now, take them out and let them breathe. Let them be what they were designed to be. Warm weather fruits full of life and goodness. And now we move on to a small but mighty food that many of us use every day, especially for its health benefits. But when stored the wrong way, it can lose everything that makes it valuable and even become a danger. It's not a fruit or a vegetable. It's a bulb. Yes, garlic. And what you learn next may surprise you. Now, we come to a humble little ingredient that has been called a superfood, a natural healer, and even nature's antibiotic. We're talking about garlic. Garlic has been used for centuries to fight infections, lower blood pressure, improve heart health, and boost immunity, especially for seniors. It's rich in a sulfur-containing compound called allicin, which is responsible for most of garlic's medicinal power. But here's the problem. The moment you refrigerate garlic, especially whole bulbs, you start losing all of those wonderful benefits. Let's break it down. Whole heads of garlic are meant to be stored in a dry, cool, well-ventilated area, like a basket or bowl in your pantry. They're naturally designed to last for weeks, even months, without going bad. But when you put garlic in the fridge, something changes. The cold temperature and moisture inside your refrigerator confuse the garlic. It senses that it's time to start growing, so it begins to sprout. And that sprouting? It's not just unsightly. It's a sign that the garlic's internal chemistry is changing. Sprouted garlic loses flavor and becomes bitter. More importantly, the allicin content begins to break down, meaning you lose many of the very compounds that make garlic healthy in the first place. So instead of a powerful immune-boosting, heart-protecting ingredient, you're left with something rubbery, less flavorful, and far less beneficial. And if that weren't enough, here's where it gets dangerous. Many people chop or mince garlic and store it in oil to save time. That might seem convenient, but if you store garlic and oil mixtures in the fridge, it can become a breeding ground for a rare but deadly bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. This bacteria causes botulism, a serious and sometimes fatal illness that leads to paralysis, respiratory failure, and even death if untreated. Botulism from garlic stored in oil is rare, but it's real. The FDA has issued multiple warnings over the years. Seniors, who often have weaker immune systems, are especially at risk. So how can you safely store garlic? Whole bulbs. Keep them in a dry, breathable container, like a mesh bag or ceramic pot in your pantry. Peeled or chopped garlic. Use it immediately, or store it short-term in the fridge. Sealed in a jar with vinegar or lemon juice to lower the pH and prevent bacteria. Never store garlic and oil at room temperature or in the fridge without proper acidification. And here's a tip. If your garlic starts sprouting, you don't have to throw it away. Just remove the green sprout inside before cooking. It's bitter, but the rest of the clove is still usable if it's firm and not moldy. Let me tell you about Jerry, a 75-year-old widower who loved cooking with garlic. To save time, he minced several cloves at once and kept them in a jar of olive oil in his fridge. One evening, after using a spoonful for his dinner, he started feeling dizzy and nauseated. Hours later, he was in the emergency room with what the doctors later identified as early-stage botulism. Luckily, Jerry recovered, but the experience shook him deeply. Since then, he keeps his garlic bulbs dry and whole and never stores minced garlic in oil again. It's not worth the risk, he said. A few seconds of chopping fresh garlic is better than a hospital stay. He's right. So if you've got garlic in the fridge right now, especially chopped or stored in oil, check it, smell it, look at it, and if in doubt, throw it out. Your safety is more important than saving a clove. And with that, we move on to another item many people refrigerate without hesitation. It's rich, aromatic, energizing, and for many, it's how the day begins. But for all its glory, when kept in the fridge, it starts to lose everything that makes it special. Yes, we're talking about coffee. Let's take a moment to talk about something that many of us treasure, a simple pleasure that starts the day, warms the soul, and fills the house with a smell that feels like home. Coffee. Whether you drink it black, with cream, or just enjoy the scent of it brewing, coffee is a part of daily life for millions of people, especially older adults. And for good reason. Coffee contains powerful antioxidants called chlorogenic acids. These compounds help fight inflammation, support heart health, and even protect brain function. In moderation, coffee can help seniors stay mentally sharp and physically energized. But here's something most people don't realize. Storing coffee in the refrigerator is one of the quickest ways to ruin it. That's right. The very place you think might keep it fresh is actually robbing it of its flavor, its health benefits, and even opening it up to contamination. Let's look at why. Coffee, especially ground coffee, and even whole beans, is what scientists call hygroscopic. That means it easily absorbs moisture and odors from its environment. Like a sponge, it soaks in whatever's around it. Now imagine this. You store your coffee next to onions, leftovers, or even fruit in the fridge. Over time, the coffee absorbs all those smells, and they show up in your cup. Ever brewed a pot and thought, why does this taste strange? That's why. But it's not just about aroma. Every time you open and close the fridge, warm air comes in and condenses on cold surfaces. This leads to moisture forming inside your coffee container. That moisture speeds up oxidation, breaking down the natural oils and antioxidants that give coffee its rich flavor and health-boosting properties. Eventually, your coffee turns stale, bitter, or flat. It loses the very spark that made it worth drinking. And in some cases, especially if the coffee is kept in a paper bag or non-airtight container, mold can start to grow inside, especially if condensation builds up. For seniors with respiratory issues or compromised immunity, mold exposure isn't just unpleasant. It can be dangerous. So how should you store coffee? Here's the best way. Keep it in an opaque, airtight container, preferably made of ceramic, stainless steel, or thick plastic. Store it in a dark, cool cupboard, away from sunlight and heat. Only grind what you need. Freshly ground beans retain more antioxidants and taste. If you buy in bulk, divide your coffee into smaller, airtight portions and freeze the extras, but never refrigerate the daily supply. Let me share the story of Anne, age 69, who loved her morning cup of coffee. But for weeks, she noticed something was off. Her brew tasted dull. Her stomach felt uneasy after drinking it. She even stopped enjoying her favorite blend. After some trial and error, she discovered the issue. She was storing her coffee in the refrigerator, in a plastic container with a loose lid. Once she switched to a sealed ceramic jar in her pantry, the change was immediate. Her coffee smelled better, tasted richer, and no longer upset her stomach. And her mornings, they became peaceful again. So, if you've got coffee sitting in the fridge, take it out. Give it the environment it deserves. Coffee isn't just a drink. It's a ritual, a comfort, and a way to greet the day. Protect it, and more importantly, protect your health. Now, as we move into the final 3 items on our list, you might be surprised by what's coming next, because the next food is golden, thick, and sweet. It seems harmless, pure, even eternal. But when you put it in the fridge, its magic disappears. Yes, we're talking about honey. Now let's talk about something as sweet as it is sacred. Honey, thick, golden, and smooth. Honey has been used for thousands of years as a natural sweetener, a healing remedy, and even a symbol of health and prosperity. It never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that were still perfectly edible after more than 3,000 years. That's the magic of honey. It's self-preserving, full of enzymes, antioxidants, and antibacterial properties that make it one of the most remarkable foods on Earth. But there's one mistake that can ruin it all: putting honey in the refrigerator. It might seem harmless. After all, cold storage keeps things fresh, right? Not with honey. In fact, refrigerating honey destroys its natural preservation system. Here's what happens. When you place honey in a cold environment, the temperature causes the natural sugars in honey, mainly glucose, to begin crystallizing. Those tiny crystals grow, forming a grainy, thick, sometimes hard texture that's difficult to scoop, spread, or stir. And while crystallized honey is still safe to eat, it's often seen as spoiled because the texture is unpleasant and the experience is lost. But texture isn't the only issue. Repeated refrigeration and condensation introduce moisture into the container. And moisture is honey's greatest enemy. That added moisture can dilute the honey and open the door for fermentation, especially if the lid isn't sealed tightly or the spoon you dipped in was wet. Fermented honey smells sour, tastes off, and loses its health benefits. For seniors, who often turn to honey as a gentle cough remedy, a sugar alternative, or an immune booster, losing those benefits means missing out on natural support the body could really use. And the enzymes that make honey antibacterial, they begin to break down in cold temperatures and when exposed to light, further reducing honey's natural power. So how should you store honey? The answer is beautifully simple. Keep it in a tightly sealed jar at room temperature, in a dark, dry place, like a kitchen cupboard or pantry. Not near the stove, not near the window, and definitely not in the fridge. If your honey has already crystallized, don't toss it. You can bring it back to life by gently warming the jar in a bowl of hot, not boiling, water. Stir occasionally and be patient. The crystals will melt, and your honey will return to its smooth, flowing self. Let me tell you about Eleanor. She's 81 and uses honey every morning in her tea. One winter, worried about spoiling, she stored her new jar of organic honey in the refrigerator. Within weeks, it had hardened into a cloudy, chunky mess. She thought it had gone bad and nearly threw it away until her daughter explained what had happened. Now, Eleanor keeps her honey right next to her teacups. It stays smooth, rich, and ready to pour every morning. Sometimes the best way to preserve something is to leave it alone. So if you've been keeping honey in the fridge, don't worry, you're not alone. But now you know, and now you can honor this ancient gift the way it was meant to be stored. Up next is a fruit that most people eat daily. Soft, sweet, and packed with potassium. It's a senior favorite for good reason. But if you've been refrigerating it, you might be ruining everything that makes it so good. Yes, we're talking about bananas. Now, let's talk about a fruit that feels like it was made just for older adults. Bananas, they're soft, easy to digest, rich in potassium and fiber. They help regulate blood pressure, support muscle health, and provide a natural boost of energy. For many seniors, bananas are a go-to snack. Simple, satisfying, and gentle on the stomach. But here's something you might not realize. Putting bananas in the refrigerator can ruin their nutritional value, texture, and taste. It's one of the most common storage mistakes made in kitchens across the world, and the damage begins almost instantly. Let's start with the science. Bananas are tropical fruits. That means they grow in warm climates and are not built to withstand cold. When exposed to refrigeration, especially before they're fully ripe, the enzymes that manage ripening are essentially shut down. This interrupts the natural ripening process, leaving the fruit hard, bland, and unevenly colored on the inside. And that's just the beginning. The cold also causes the banana's skin to darken rapidly. It turns gray or black, giving the appearance of being rotten, even if the inside hasn't spoiled yet. For many people, This is enough to throw it away, even when it's still technically edible. But for seniors, there's an even bigger concern. Cold storage not only ruins texture, it also destroys antioxidants found in bananas, compounds like dopamine and catechins, which help protect the brain and fight oxidative stress, start to degrade faster when exposed to low temperatures. These antioxidants are incredibly valuable for older adults, helping protect memory and reduce inflammation. And there's another risk. When bananas overripen in the fridge, the moisture inside the peel can create the perfect conditions for mold growth, especially around the stem. You may not see it right away, but once mold begins to form, it can spread quickly and silently. So what should you do? Simple. Store bananas at room temperature. Place them in a fruit bowl on the counter, preferably hanging if possible to reduce bruising. Keep them away from other ripening fruits like apples, which emit ethylene gas that can make bananas ripen too quickly. And if they become too ripe to eat fresh, don't toss them. Freeze them. Peel the bananas first. Slice or break them into chunks and place them in an airtight bag or container in the freezer. They'll be perfect for smoothies, banana bread, or a healthy frozen snack. Let me tell you about Walter, 77, who relied on bananas to keep his leg cramps at bay. But every week, he stored them in the fridge, thinking it would make them last longer. He hated the way they turned black and often threw them away before finishing the bunch. When his granddaughter noticed, she explained what was happening. Walter started keeping them on the counter. Not only did they taste better and look better, but he found himself wasting less and feeling better. Sometimes, nature knows best. Bananas are meant for the warmth, so if you've been refrigerating them, you're not alone. But now that you know, let them breathe. Let them ripen. Let them nourish you the way they were meant to. And now, we've come to the final item on our list. This one may surprise you more than all the rest, because it's considered one of the healthiest staples in a senior's diet. It protects the heart, supports the joints, and adds richness to meals. But in the fridge, it turns from helpful to harmful. Yes, we're talking about olive oil. And now we've reached the last and most surprising item on our list, a food that many of us rely on daily. It's praised in every heart-healthy diet, celebrated in the Mediterranean lifestyle, and known for its anti-inflammatory power, olive oil. For seniors, olive oil is more than just cooking fat. It's a source of healthy monounsaturated fats, rich in antioxidants, and known to reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, and even cognitive decline. But if you're storing olive oil in the refrigerator, you may be undoing all those benefits. Here's why. When olive oil is refrigerated, the cold temperatures cause the fats to solidify. You may have seen this. Your olive oil turns cloudy or forms white crystals, almost like wax. That's not dangerous in itself, but what happens next is, each time you take that bottle out of the fridge and place it back in, it goes through temperature fluctuations. Warm, cold, warm again. And this back and forth creates the perfect environment for oxidation, a chemical reaction where healthy fats begin to break down and turn into free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules that can trigger inflammation in the body, contribute to aging, and even play a role in chronic diseases like arthritis and cancer. That's the last thing you want from an oil that's supposed to be protecting your heart and joints. But it's not just oxidation that's the problem. Repeated cooling and reheating also damages the polyphenols, the plant-based compounds in olive oil that give it its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. These are the very compounds that make olive oil so good for your brain, skin, and blood vessels. And let's not forget the taste. Refrigerated olive oil loses its delicate flavor, the fruity, peppery, grassy notes that make it so enjoyable. It becomes bland, sometimes bitter, and often thick and difficult to pour, increasing the risk of overuse or spills. So instead of adding a beautiful finishing touch to your salad or steamed veggies, refrigerated olive oil may be doing the opposite, damaging your food, your palate, and your health. So, what's the solution? Store your olive oil the way Mediterranean families have for centuries, in a dark, airtight bottle, preferably made of glass or metal. Keep it in a cool, dark cupboard, away from heat sources like the stove or direct sunlight. Use it regularly. High-quality extra virgin olive oil has a shelf life of up to 18 to 24 months, but once opened, it's best consumed within a few months for peak flavor and benefits. And remember, if your olive oil smells like crayons or old peanuts, it's gone rancid. When in doubt, throw it out. Let me tell you about Gloria, age 73, who took great pride in following a Mediterranean diet. She used olive oil daily, on her toast, in her soups, and even as a moisturizer. But she stored it in the fridge, believing it would last longer. Over time, her hands began aching more. Her digestion felt sluggish, and her oil, once vibrant and smooth, was hard to pour and bitter to taste. After speaking with her nutritionist, she made one simple change. She moved the bottle to a dark pantry and bought a small dark glass dispenser for daily use. The flavor returned, her food tasted better, and she began feeling lighter, less inflamed, more energized. It was a simple fix, but it changed everything. And now, it's your turn. Take a moment today to check your refrigerator. Do you see a bottle of olive oil pushed to the back? Is it cloudy? Hardened? If so, take it out. Replace it with a fresh bottle if needed. Store it with care, and let it give you the strength, heart health, and vitality it was meant to provide. Because you deserve food that fuels your best years, not shortens them. Final reflection. Let's quickly recap the 9 everyday foods you should never refrigerate, especially if you're over 60. 1. Potatoes. Cold turns starch to sugar, creating harmful compounds. 2. Bread. Refrigeration causes stalling and mold risk. 3. Onions. Absorb moisture and spoil faster in the fridge. 4. Tomatoes. Lose flavor, texture, and vitamin C in the cold. 5. Garlic. Sprouts and loses allicin. Risk of botulism in garlic oil mixes. 6. Coffee. Absorbs odors and moisture. Loses antioxidants and flavor. 7. Honey. Crystallizes, ferments, and loses antibacterial power. 8. Bananas. Ripening stops. Antioxidants are damaged. Skin blackens. 9. Olive oil. Cold leads to oxidation, flavor loss, and inflammation risk. Now, take a deep breath. This isn't about fear. It's about empowerment. Every item you move, every small change you make in your kitchen is a step toward better health, more energy, and more years doing what you love. You've taken the time to learn. Now, take the time to act. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel for more insights like this. We'd love to hear from you. Have you been refrigerating any of these foods? Which one surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, small changes can lead to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. We'll see you in the next video.